Welcome to Good Morning Hospitality, your one-stop shop for the latest news, noteworthy trends, and thought-provoking discussions across the industry. From hotels and short-term rentals to all things travel and hospitality, you'll find each episode equips you with the information that you need to start your week. Join us on Good Morning Hospitality every Monday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Good morning.
Good morning, Brandy. Nice to see you. How are we doing today?
Nice to see you. I'm great. I'm in New Orleans right now, just bopping around, visiting all the properties.
I love it. Well, happy Monday.
It's the best day of the week.
Let's go. Let's go. We
We're only
are
supposed
up.
to fight over that.
I know. That's why I was like, okay, give her the setup and then spike it. Unfortunately, for all of our listeners, Michael Golden is not here. He is getting ready and prepped to become a dad once more. So we gave him this week off. So he actually gets to have some time off and not be worked like a dog, especially with our show, because that's all we do. We just work. So wanted to give him some time off, but he will be back in the next coming weeks, maybe month or so, depending on all the timing. So we wish him and his family all the best. But until then, you get the lovely Brandy and Will combo duo, which I'm excited about. So are you ready to jump into amazing topics this week?
Let's do it. We have quite a bit to cover, kind of a little bit of a sampler platter of things that are going on. So let's start. Where are you right now? You have a hotel background.
I am in a new city. I'm in Minneapolis, and I'm here for the TravelNet Next conference. So I'm really excited to attend. Obviously, TravelNet is a great partner of ours. They've been with us for quite a run, I would say. We did our first 6 months with them, and now we're doing another. So really excited to be here. We obviously had Ryan Bailey on the show not too long ago. Now I get to sit down with Ryan and Andrew and a bunch of the executives at TravelNet, and everyone on the team, including the users and the property management companies that are part of the company, and get some micro interviews done, get some good sessions in. And the main theme for the users conference this year is advanced and scaling technology and how to use it. So there's quite a line and run of sessions this year for the conference, in the sense of, I think there's over 60 sessions in the next 2.5 days. So there's a lot to report. Yeah, there's a lot to report on. I think I'm missing like the morning part, but they knew, had to get on the GMH pod to bring in the news for our listeners. So I'm excited though. Good stuff.
Yeah, I find the kind of the software summits, like whatever usually your PMS is, I think that can be the time where you really get to, like, first of all, find the people that you've been trying to find for the last year and get some answers. And then also really learn how to leverage all the different parts of the product that you're paying for. So I'm curious if they have like a lot of workshops, like actually practical stuff, because I think that's also where, like, you can hear a session about, kind of ideas, but it's like, okay, where do I physically go? Like, what are the click paths to get to the, the things that I'm missing in the product. So can't wait to hear.
100%. So yeah, for all the track or TNS users and members, hunt down those people that you've been wanting to hunt down for a long time. And yeah, I'm excited to hear how it goes. I'm going to be part of those conversations and reporting it live. So we'll hopefully have maybe a couple lives throughout the week outside of our hotel crew on Wednesday. And then I'll do a kind of a recap for everyone on the big high level takeaways probably next week. So it'll be a good extra bonus content. We all love a good bonus.
Love some bonus content.
Yes. All right, Brandy, we have like you said, a platter. I love that. A charcuterie board of topics to cover today. So I will let you jump in. Let's go for topic number 1.
Sure. So this is super quick, but I'm sure a lot of you saw that Sonder did a reverse stock split. A couple months ago, they were threatened to be delisted from the NASDAQ. So this is not a surprise, so that they can continue being on the NASDAQ. And, maybe this will breathe some new life and give them some more longevity. We kind of predict that Vacasa and Inspirato will follow shortly. So none of that is groundbreaking, but just kind of what we all thought was going to happen. And again, just hoping that, I'm rooting for these companies. We really need to, it's good to see a success story. And it makes, if any of you are raising money in the near future, it might make it a little bit easier if you have some success stories out there. So I had my like trading app open and I looked at, and it said what my Sonder share price was that day. And I was like, that is very high. And then I realized what happened. So, I had a moment of oh my gosh, they really turned things around aggressive 48 hours. And then I actually thought about it, and that obviously was not what happened. But yeah, so now we'll just kind of see what happens in the next year, and hopefully they can turn things around. Obviously, being focusing on the cash flow is everyone's biggest priority right now.
100%. And I forgot to do this before we jumped in the topic, but I'm getting a couple messages personally directly on LinkedIn as we're live for next and for this episode. So anyone tuning into the live right now, we're going to do a quick roll call. Send us where you're coming in from. I'm in Minneapolis right now. Brandy, you are in New Orleans. So let us know where you're at. We're not in our normal locations. Maybe you're not your normal locations. I know there's probably 3 other conferences happening right now. There's Favor out in Orlando. We got Skiff's Global Forum coming up, or I think that's sometime this week. So yeah, roll call. Let us know where you're tuning in from. And if you're listening, we would love to open up the hospitality hotline if you want to be part of the episode. Sorry to interrupt and break up your charcuterie
No,
topic.
it's okay.
But figured we did that last time, and it was a good, fun way to connect with listeners. And as I'm getting these messages, shout out to Catherine with booking.com, who is here at Next as well. That can't wait to meet up. All right, let's go.
All right. And Alondra from Madrid says hello. So thank you for tuning in from Europe. We love our European listeners. It's fun. This is an afternoon thing for all of them, which I think is great. And Alondra, I might have to come visit you in Madrid. I love Madrid. I lived there for a while, so maybe I'll hit you up.
Alondra is amazing. So shout out to you, and you too,
amazing.
Jenny. Shout out. All right.
Okay, great. So our next topic, also super fun, regulations. We're not going to get too into the nitty gritty here because this is, first of all, it's not the most fun topic. And there's just so much going on. And so really this kind of came after there was a spate of, either basically bans or, kind of real extreme changes to regulations, not just in the United States, but also throughout Europe. Florence has totally banned new short-term rentals. And, there's ongoing, big changes in the UK, kind of all over the place. And so I think you're seeing just such a huge backlash. And one of the things we'd really love is if you are a listener in kind of these markets that have been really affected by some of the changes that have happened recently, we'd love to hear just kind of what the practicality of that is are these, is it immediate? Is there guidance? Is there, or is the process to get your permit renewed? All of that. Is it easy? Kind of what is it actually looking like outside of these articles that we're seeing? Because, articles have to have a little bit of a flashiness to them to get us to click on them. So we want to hear what's actually happening. But, as Will said, I'm in New Orleans, and this is where they just passed some more regulations about, kind of limiting the number of new permits that you can have. And so that's, for existing operators that have their permits that were able to kind of, be grandfathered in or who won quote, the lottery. It's great because it kind of caps your supply. But obviously if you are, a new business owner, you're a homeowner that maybe bought a property and thought you were going to be able to do this, that's obviously really difficult. And we saw, as an operator on Airbnb, they had, complied with the regulations, but they didn't account for the hotel licenses. So we were battling for a couple weeks because our properties just went offline. So, these are, like with anything, when there's these changes, I don't think that they totally get thought through all the way to the end, and like how things are actually going to be implemented. And, I know that especially city governments can be really constrained in their resources. So this isn't throwing all the shade at them, but when you're instituting these kind of, regulations or policies, whatever, it's really good to like have that thought all the way through.
I couldn't agree more. And it's crazy because even the big companies, as we mentioned, Sonder, there's even in the article talking about regulation that when Sonder, not only did the stock price split or reverse, they also were not impacted in New York or these other
Mhm.
cities that they're in because they have the hotel licenses. But yet you would think that maybe the platforms kind of pick up on that. Like they know that these, like, they know Sonder exists. They know these other companies exist, and now they're getting around the regulations through having these permits and licenses. So you would think they would have accounted for that, but like you said, I agree. Not fully thought through, which is unfortunate. But I'm hoping, and especially if any of our listeners have more insight, I would love to know, or I'm hoping to see the regulation landscape be more proactive than reactive. I know we're all kind of seeing the headlines change, and this is the perfect time for us to get involved in our local cities, whether you're remote or in the destination, finding a way to just be a big advocate. Like we have a megaphone right now because we're on a podcast and we have an audience and all this other stuff. But now this is kind of the time for everyone to be their own megaphone as well. So I'm hoping, friends that rent responsibly and other people are helping others gear up for the same type of kind of conversations, if you say so.
Yeah, and this actually kind of ties into one of our other topics that is near to dear in my heart, but at the just or Florida in general and the market there. And I know we have, Florida is a huge vacation rental market. And it's interesting because when you actually start working in Florida, there's all these little like fiefdoms, right? Like all these little cities and towns have their own codes and regulations and everything like that. So for example, in Miami, we have a building in North Bay Village, but North Bay Village is just a couple little islands between Miami and Miami Beach, but it is its own city. So you have everything is different there compared to it's all these tiny little municipalities. And positively, people have been coming to Florida. It's obviously a huge vacation rental destination. People want to buy properties there, investment properties, but now the supply is, it's just there's so much supply. And there was a great Skift article talking about, I'm hyper aware of what's going on in South Florida, but kind of talking about the rest of the state and how there is just this huge amount of supply, but also the cost of living is going up. All of your expenses are going up. And it's also hard to find labor in those markets. That's getting increasingly difficult. And it is like that it's a huge problem when someone has to drive an hour to come be a maintenance tech or a housekeeper because all of your costs just start ballooning. And so even if you've been seeing some record revenue, which obviously we've been talking about this year, has kind of tapered off or slowed down a little bit, but still some pretty significant revenue, your bottom line might not be looking as great because those expenses have either kept on pace or outpaced that revenue growth. And in Miami, for example, they're building these huge buildings that have, built-in STR components, which, as a renter, I think that's fantastic. But as an operator, you're like, okay, so I can see these 7 buildings from my window that are going up that are going to allow STR. Those each have like 600 to 1,000 units in them. And it's just like, oh my God, so much supply. So we've mentioned that on the show before. Just kind of, I guess we'll have to see until those buildings open. But just across Florida in general, I think that squeeze is being felt more and more. And you have things that people might not think about, like the cost of insurance. A lot of the major insurers have left the state. This is kind of the same thing that's happening around a lot of the Gulf states, also here in Louisiana. And so that's just another added expense. It might have been $1,500 a couple years ago. Now it might be $7,000. So you're just dealing with these other forces in the state economies that are making it more and more expensive to operate.
Yeah, and you said it perfectly. I The only thing it blows my mind if you remember during COVID, the early days of it, how many people were at home and they're like, "Hey, I have time for home projects. I have time to go work on my investment properties," and you couldn't find lumber or plywood or
Mhm.
anything at Home Depot or Lowe's. Like no one had any supply. So now you have this crazy amount of buildup from the last 2 to 3 years. That probably is just now what we're seeing is this slinky effect where the link is kind of catching up to the pull that we had during COVID and the later days of 2021. And one quick shout out to Jamie Lane, who's on a plane tuning in on his way to Expedia's Explore Fest. So
I love
shout
the
out to him.
dedication, Jamie. That is dedication right there.
Our one and only data nerd co-host tuning in from the sky. I love it. Okay, but so you have this kind of slinky effect happening now, and the amount of people that are in South Florida or in just Florida in general with these expenses, with all this stuff. I don't know. Like, part of me, I don't know, because you have companies like Central, right? You have Central who's doing this live in, and then of course now you can rent your unit if you're traveling or doing other things like that. I think it's great. I don't know how many people are going to do it because of still the same fact of I don't know who's staying in my home. I don't know where to put my personal belongings when there's a guest here. There's these still things that people are still trying to, I think, get over these hurdles. Us as professionals, whether we have whole home or multifamily units, the units aren't being lived in ever. Like they're not living units. That's at least for us. Like we tell our owners, yeah, you can use it for your own vacation and family events and stuff. That's revenue that you're going to miss out on. But at the end of the day, you're not living there. Like we're not having you have like this closet of stuff or pictures and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how this amount of supply that's being used kind of as like this personal live in, put on Airbnb and activate when you're gone. I think it's great in theory, and I think companies like Central are going to do better than companies like Nito and others in the past. But this amount of supply and the actual use case is going to be interesting to watch over the next coming years, especially with
Yeah.
Marriott, apartments. And yeah, I can go on and on and on.
I know. Well, it's funny. Central is one of those buildings that's going up like a couple blocks from my house. So I can like watch it in real time, a competitor being built. But I do kind of wonder how I think it's this really fun selling point of like, hey, like you can earn this extra money, but when there's so much supply, I mean, it's just a race to the bottom in terms of pricing. So like people might find that it's not even worth it. And I think, I can see why that type of building is appealing. I don't think it would ever happen in New York, just given the spate of regulations that just came through. But, it's if you do live in a city where it's really expensive, it is really attractive. I'm going home for Christmas for 2 weeks or whatever. I could rent it out, but I think we'll have to see what the reality is. And then even outside of the urban markets, the traditional vacation rental destinations that are seeing slower demand, and even if they're seeing better revenue, just really dramatic increases in costs. And that's something that as an operator, I mean, we have a lot of really smart operators that listen to this, just being so diligent about going through your P&L and seeing like what are the must-haves and what are the nice-to-haves, and where can you like giving yourself some flexibility. I know it's interesting in Florida, especially because Miami's high season, we're like about to go into it. It's kind of December, January, like the end of the year, beginning of next year. Whereas up north in the kind of the bigger homes, you're going into slow season. And I think now the preparation for slow season just has to be, you have to be so much more diligent and plan, just like really get your house in order for the coming year, because I think the swings are going to be much more dramatic than they used to be.
Yeah, financial stability, profitability, making sure you're not just raising capital to raise capital, or you're not just spending capital to spend. Yeah, this is going to be really important, as we've covered in the past. And as you mentioned, Brandy, the race to the bottom, with as you're talking about all this supply and the pricing, it sounds like moving on to our next topic. It sounds like Airbnb is going to try to maybe control our price and downfall to the very pit of bottom despair. Just kidding. That was a little over dramatic, guys. Sorry.
Such positivity on this Monday morning, Will.
Hey, I'm feeling good. I'm caffeinated, hydrated, all the stuff, but reading these articles, and as you were saying in the earlier point, going into these planning, like people start sharing this information, and then of course operators, especially people that tune into the show, then have to like be proactive, and then it's like kind of a little bit of a freak out. So we're like, okay, Airbnb is now saying like they're going to make it cheaper and more affordable for the travelers, plus they're going to cut cleaning fees and all these things. Like, how are they going to control this? And so we don't have any information. I don't have the golden answer for you or any of our listeners. We're obviously going to find out in
We did
the
ask.
we did ask. We are not making statements without asking first, but it's going to be very interesting to see how this all plays out in the sense of control. And if this whole thing, like, people joined Airbnb and this platform and vacation rentals most likely for the sense of being able to control what they're charging for the experience in the home or the apartment or whatever they're providing. So the statement with Brian Chesky is a little vague, going into obviously their summer release, which will come out in November. I think it's their summer release coming out in November. But basically talking about how they listened to the travelers, right? It's getting too expensive. It's not as affordable as a hotel. Um, it's actually more expensive than a hotel, which back in the day, it was, anyone could get an Airbnb for cheap, or a short-term rental for all of our STR people that hate being called an Airbnb. I get it. But yeah, there's all these things happening, and it's very interesting, especially after last week. But Brandy, I would love to get your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm gonna I guess another rant about an OTA. No, so
Brandy rant,
kind of
Brandy rant, Brandy
I
rant.
know. Um, I I think that part of the thing that, I thought about after last week's episode and things to keep in mind is that we're going into the fourth quarter. So there are a lot of things that have to be announced in order to kind of satisfy investors in the public markets. And, there are big topics that have been swirling around. And a lot of these announcements are the response to those topics. So the price sensitivity being one of them. And are they going to start lowering the commission? Because that's one way they can directly help the customer and the host. And, the reality is there are ways that they can curb that. It's all, they control the algorithm of the properties that you're seeing. So if you have a higher cleaning fee or a higher price, that could, put you on page 2, which is, kind of like a death sentence sometimes. And I also think it's important to, I don't know, like, not freak out too much, which like I have a knee jerk reaction. I'm sure a lot of people do when you see a headline or you hear something on the show and it just like elicits like a visceral response. And if you are one of those people, message your account executive. That's what we've been doing to try to be like, okay, what, like, we heard this on the news or in, online. What are the actual details of this so that we can get ahead of it, so that we can be prepared? There's like one of the things was a verified host or a verified partner or something like that for Airbnb. And I think that's great. That's totally fine. I think getting rid of scammy, bad operators, I'm here for it. But when companies announce something like this in kind of a casual passing, and the actual release is coming in November, they have to realize that it's going to elicit like a real response from all of their suppliers. From the traveler, it kind of doesn't really matter when this goes into effect. They're either going to book something now because they need to book it, or they're going to benefit from whatever it is in November when it gets released. So I think having, like, before these announcements are made, it could be a general blast to all of the, every host saying this, kind of like the new cleaning fee initiative is this, and here are all the components, or the verified partner is this, and here are all the things you need to have prepared, because that, like, it really affects how you run your business. And I think that one of the things that, like, why I get so fired up about it is because we are constantly adapting to different things in our physical reality, like things that the guests need, how, like, something breaks in a home, we're adapting to that. and trying to adapt to local government regulations. And then you have to like, oh, did the OTAs change something? And it could be something that's not even a policy. It could be something in their API connection. And now this one thing doesn't feed from your PMS onto Airbnb. You know, it's like these little details. You're playing whack-a-mole constantly. So I just think a little bit more, you know, a little bit more thought or preparation. They don't have to say it in this, you know, interview with Skift. That's not sexy. That's not what the people who are attending that conference want to know, the nitty gritty. But, you know, maybe that same day, all the account executives send their partners an email saying like, here's kind of the explanation, or like, this is when you're going to have the explanation, like November 1st, you'll get all the details. So just having the, you know, equipping yourself with the knowledge to be able to run your business correctly so that you're not scrambling if a policy is put into place and then, you know, your listing is paused and you don't realize it for, you know, a couple days or whatever.
Yeah. And I'm no expert, so I get it. Like, these things are going to change. I don't build tech for a living. That's not my role. That's not my space. But I will say the verified listing piece to me automatically kind of raised a red flag, because we've seen this before. This is an old, hence why I put in the title of the episode, Old Promises, right? Like, we're going to make sure that our listings are verified and that these homes are real and that you're not being scammed. Verification is not just a simple sign up, like the way you can create a listing today or an Airbnb account. It's pretty dang easy, and I can put any name with any picture that I want. It legit. I've done it. I've played around with it. I've showed friends.
What? Will?
I deleted the accounts, obviously, but like, okay, that's not that's great in theory to say like, hey, this listing is going to be verified, or this account's going to be verified, or this host or operator. But verification is actual, real in-depth application of checking documents and checking and verifying with other databases. So, you know, maybe if they could partner up with AutoHost, great, verify us, like do the background checks, do the stuff, do the real things. But don't say you're going to create this verified listing and yet you're still going to get this flood of scam and bad actors that are going to still be able to get away with what they've done in the past, which is creating fake listings using a different address, doing this, doing that. And then boom, now that people are walking away with a couple $1,000s, and then they do the same cycle over and over again on their new account. So like, verification is legit. Like, I'm not a tech builder, but I know verification is more than just checking a photo ID that I scan in, you know, type deal. So there's got to
I think that's
be
the
more.
problem, is that it's the, you know, the people that are scamming and doing all that stuff, they move faster than the bigger ship, the bigger Airbnb ship or whatever can move. And I think one thing, I mean, it was an enormous headache for us, but it's worth it. Like the KYC policies and know your customer policies that, you know, banks do. If you're an operator of a certain size on different platforms, you have to do. I mean, they go into the details of who owns your company, of your bank, you know, all of that stuff. And so obviously I don't think that is feasible. I think you have to be a certain like revenue threshold for that to take place, but that's one way. And ID verification, I mean, I would say Airbnb from a operator standpoint has the best, like we're not getting most of our chargebacks from Airbnb. There's one OTA that reigns supreme for chargebacks. And it is not Airbnb. And but still, even with their like ID verification, you have to take a selfie and all of that. There's still, I mean, people are still finding ways around it. And it's so funny when when we go to create a new account for a new building, I like will get so annoyed because like instead of our distribution team setting up like the whole thing, like I'll have to go in and like do some parts of it because it requires like my ID, or it's just easier if I'm on the account. And so even when I'm like huffing and puffing about like just taking 5 minutes out of my day, I'm like, you know what, this is actually a real safety measure. So I do appreciate that it's there. But like cyber security and things like that we could get our auto host friends on here to talk more about it, but there's so much to it. So I do, you know, hopefully whatever they announce in November will be more robust, because I also just like personal anecdote, have been booking a house in Vail for skiing in March, and we were looking all over the place, going to direct sites and everything. And then there was so many listings that were fake, and I could tell that the only real one was on Airbnb. But if my friends had been booking it, it was a couple $1,000s cheaper on Verbo or some other site, and they were going to book it. And I was like, don't do it. This isn't a real listing. They have no reviews. They have one review. It's all fake. It's written in poor English. Like, this is definitely not a real listing. So,
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
they're out there. And also, if you're going on a group trip with friends that aren't in our industry, you just have to make yourself the designated booker, because everyone that listens to this podcast knows how to do this correctly. And you just have to shoulder that burden for a little bit.
Preach. You took the words right out of my mouth. And the one thing I'll say to like a final thought before we share on how you're going to win a happy hour for your housekeeping team.
Oh, yeah.
I will say this is a perfect, and I know like book direct is maybe a message a lot of people are kind of getting. It's kind of like in one ear out the other. But I think not book direct, but building a brand is going to be so much more important right now. Getting a legit brand name, a brand theme, all this stuff, get like standardized as an operator if you're not, because this is going to be so impactful for changes that happen on Airbnb, Verbo, Booking, anything like that. You want to have people that do stay in your properties, whether they come from any of these OTAs, to feel comfortable to book with you again and to book with you directly and to do all this other stuff. So build a brand and build your own dependence and reliance on yourself rather than these OTAs. That's my big, like, do whatever tactics you need, get whatever software or tech you need, do what you need to do. But at the end of the day, it's about building a brand and building a company. And that's kind of where I am very passionate. So,
Wow, I wish we'll have to put a pin in that, because I have slight rebuttals. But I will save it for another day.
yeah, we'll maybe have a face off on the next pod.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Okay, so I'm really excited about this. And for all of our listeners, whether you're a hotel or a short-term rental operator, this is probably the best call to action, the best giveaway that we could have done with any of our sponsors. So our partners at Sojo have decided, you know what? It's great to get you wine. It's great to get you coffee. It's great to get you all these samples and kits. But there's nothing better than getting your team together and having a good time off work hours and just getting to relax and maybe have a drink or two. So if you want to get a complimentary happy hour for your housekeeping team, all you have to do from today until I think I put October 16th. That's the last episode before VRMA that we're going to do. So by that time in this window, you need to get a sample kit from Sojo with a link in the show notes. And when you do, you are automatically input into a drawing. And at the end, we'll do a randomizer and it will pick out whoever the winner is, and you'll win a whole happy hour for your housekeeping team, complimentary, provided by Sojo. So what a great way to, one, reward your team for working very, 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 very hard. It's not an easy season right now, whether it's a low season or a high season. It's still like we're grinding. Like operators out there are nonstop, go, go, go. There's no breaks, there's no rest, there's no nothing. So we want to be intentful and thoughtful with our partnerships. And Sojo was totally on board and actually brought up this idea of like, hey, at the end of the day, the housekeepers, the people that we work with and dedicate our product to make sure it's easy for them to put into the home and to get into the rental and make sure that your guests are taken care of. They wanted to make sure that they're taken care of as well. So I think this is going to be really, really fun to see who wins and to see all the people get the kits and all the drawing of it. But man, I'm so excited for whoever this housekeeping team is. I also like personally like, can I fly out and just attend the happy hour with them? I'll come.
I'm part of your housekeeping team. No, I think this is a great way. Either you're like kind of wrapping up high season, or you'll be gearing it up to go into your high season. So I think this is awesome. And I think your housekeeping team, I think everybody would agree, is kind of the hardest working people that we have in our stack of employees. So I think this is awesome.
Agreed. And so I know for the live viewers, there's no link technically right now. I'll put a link in the comments, and then we'll have a couple posts throughout the time period of today up to October 16th to make sure that you have opportunities to make sure you get your sample kit, but then you're also included in that drawing. So make sure you're tuning in on LinkedIn. Importantly, that's the main platform We're on others, but that's where we'll be putting all the stuff or the show notes in Spotify and Apple. So make sure you get that. And Brandy, anything exciting for you as you are in New Orleans, or anything coming up? I
Yeah,
would love
well,
to hear.
I'm going back to Miami in a couple hours, and then the next podcast I will be broadcasting from Bucharest. So I'm going to Romania on Friday. So
Love it.
very excited. I haven't been before. One of my best friends lives there, so I'm excited to cross another country off.
I love it. Well, we'll have a couple weeks with just you and me, and then we,
Hmm.
of course, have our hotel crew. But then I think right before Verma, we have confirmed we got Nico, who is the founder of Bob W, who will be on the pod. And I just did my own interview with him on Slick Talk. Great, just smart dude. Really good conversation. Really excited for his episode here. But we are in conference season. I'm not going
Hmm.
to be surprised if we see a couple announcements this week
I know.
or closer to Verma about fundraising and acquisitions and all these things. So, for all of our listeners, if you didn't hear, last week we officially launched our Good Morning Capital Report. So it is free, but there is a subscriber wall. You do need to give us your email to get in. But basically, it's a monthly newsletter. We're going to be sending updates on all the financial news happening within the space: hotels, short-term rentals, tech, all the stuff. But then there's a dashboard. You can play with the dashboard. You can interact with it. You can search your company. If you don't see your company there, let us know. There's a form to fill out. But at the end of the day, this capital report is something very exciting, and we've already got a good handful of subscribers that have gotten in and have been playing around and sending us feedback. So just wanted to say, if you haven't, go do it. It would make my day personally, because it's been a fun project that I've been
Yeah,
working on.
Will's been
But
working really hard on it. So thank you, Will.
of course, and we got it all branded and stuff. So yeah, very excited. But Brandy, I think this is our time to say goodbye. I'll see
I
you
know. See you next
on
week.
the next pod. Bye, guys.